Stephanie Bianco speaking. I am the Associate Director of the CSU Chico Center for Healthy Communities, or as we call it, CHC, and Professor in the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences. Just in case you're not familiar, CHC is a center under the College of Natural Sciences and is one of the prime CalFresh outreach contractors. We are one of 5. This contract is funded by the California Department of Social Services, or CDSS, and represents an unprecedented partnership among the 4 California higher ed university systems, which includes the California Community College, California State University, University of California, and Association of Independent California College and University Systems. As you can see from this next slide, this noteworthy contract impacts over 38 college campuses throughout the entire state of California. Ultimately, this means that we will be serving our high-need students in every corner of the state. And in the room presenting with me today with a lot of excitement are Jenny Breed, who is soon to be Jenny Fales. She was just recently married, so we're very happy for her. And we just want to make sure you recognize that new name, Fales, the CalFresh Outreach Contract Director. And we also have Amy Reason, Naomi Stamper, and Kathleen Johnson, 3 of CHC's fiscal analysts. I'm sure you know or recognize their names and have been in communication with them and others on our team. And as you can imagine, our CHC Prime team will be growing in the near future. And in addition to all of us here at CHC and on the CHC CFO Prime team, you are also being supported by the Chancellor's offices in the California State University and California Community College systems. We are also identifying key players in the President's office within the UC system. And once that occurs, we will get all the support we need moving forward. I'm going to give us a quick status update on the contract, and then Jenny will dive into the webinar agenda. So we know that many of you, like us, are anxiously waiting to know when this contract or the master agreement will be signed and can officially begin. Well, we have good news. We have been given promising written language from CDSS that this contract will be backdated by 10/1. So if you have been doing work, know that that is definitely a possibility to backdate that time to get reimbursed. What this means for you is that you have a couple of options. You can begin work on this project right now, knowing that there is a possibility that you will not be able to, there is a slight possibility that you will not be able to invoice or get reimbursed back to 10/1, or hold off on project activities until you receive a confirmed start date from us. You do need to know, though, that the CHC Prime team at CSU Chico is starting now because we want to be sure that you receive the support you need. However, we understand some campuses may be a little hesitant or a little more conservative and may want to wait. Whatever you decide, we will support, and know your campus will not be penalized for starting a little later. We have been told by CDSS that we should be receiving our signed master agreement any day. We're hoping even today, and we will update you as soon as we know more. If in fact the master agreement has a start date of 10/1, which is likely, we will be amending or revising your existing subcontracts, so don't worry about that. So for now, I'm turning it over to Jenny Breed/Fales to give you an overview of our first contract webinar.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. So this is Jenny Breed, soon to be Fales. Just so you're familiar with my new name that will be changing within the next month. So the webinar today, we're going to be doing some basics of CalFresh. I want to be sure that you have a few nuggets of what the CalFresh benefit actually is. And then I want to give you a few nuggets about the CalFresh Outreach Program so that you have a basic understanding of why we have this contract. And then we're going to dive into the requirements and allowable activities to actually implement the contract. We'll tie in the fiscal piece, how the fiscal activities and requirements mesh with the program activities and requirements, and then we'll look at some basic contract structure and how we'll you. Okay, CalFresh. CalFresh is federally known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and it's funded through the Farm Bill. As you may know, there's some conversations right now happening about what will be funded in the Farm Bill at the federal level. And so if you hear that, know that that's where the funding comes for the CalFresh benefit as well as CalFresh outreach. Once it is decided in the Farm Bill that CalFresh, or SNAP at the federal level, will be funded, it comes to the USDA and is administered through the Food and Nutrition Services branch. The Food and Nutrition Services branch also oversees such programs as WIC, senior meals, free and reduced school lunches. So as you can see, this CalFresh benefit is with other federal food assistance resources. And that's partly why they changed the name from food stamps to SNAP to CalFresh in California, is because they wanted to ensure that this program was focused on access to healthier foods that support nutrition. When it comes to the state of California, it comes to the California Department of Social Services, who then distributes it to local agencies, county offices who administer the CalFresh program, meaning they approve and deny applications. It goes also to CalFresh outreach contractors. So there are 5 prime contractors in the state, and each of us have many subcontractors. And it also goes to local public health offices who administer nutrition education programs. So as you can see, the funding supports that overall healthy eating, access to healthy eating assistance. The CalFresh benefit actually comes to recipients on an EBT card, or electronic benefits transfer card, and it looks like a debit card. Their case number is at the bottom there. And it really is a card that holds public benefits. So it also has a person's cash aid benefit on it if they in fact receive CalFresh as well as cash aid. And just because someone has a debit card doesn't necessarily mean that they have CalFresh. They might just have cash aid, or vice versa. They might just have CalFresh. What's great about this is it really has helped with the segmentation around the nutrition assistance benefit, and this can be used across counties, across states, and it also is really great for students, especially to be able to use it at the self-checkout. So this is always a great slide because in our communities, you're going to see CalFresh referred to as many different things. And so I want you to have sort of that background when you're seeing things in the community of the benefit that we're talking about, because it's all the same. So first, you're going to see we accept EBT. Now this, I wouldn't know whether they accept CalFresh and cash aid. I would have to ask the store that I was at if they accept both. But yeah, sometimes you're going to see we accept EBT, but we do have to find out whether it's CalFresh and cash aid or just one or the other. We also might see CalFresh EBT at farmers market. So this particular farmers market, they only accept the CalFresh benefits on an EBT card. We accept SNAP benefits. So you're going to often see this on corner stores or grocery stores because this is the federal name, and those retailers have to apply to the feds to get the retailer confirmation to be able to accept the benefits. So they get these stickers and such from the feds to support them being a retailer in our communities. You might also see we accept EBT, food stamps. Again, the name changed about 10 years ago, and it is really focused on healthy eating, but we will sometimes still see some of the old signs in our community. In this last sign, you'll see EBT cash. Again, this one is accepting EBT cash, but not EBT CalFresh. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the history of the National SNAP CalFresh program, it started in the 1930s and really was a program to support the excess supply of food that farmers in our county were having. And so the federal government bought basic farm commodities at discounted prices and distributed them among hunger relief agencies in state and local communities. In the 60s, we revived the food stamp program as a safety net against hunger and malnutrition for low-income Americans and families. And as you know, in the 70s, the Congress passed the Food Stamp Reform Act, which really improved the access and efficiency of the food stamp program. What's interesting about the CalFresh benefit is that more than half of the recipients are children or older adults, and that another key component is that this program has one of the highest level of accuracy rates, meaning that 98% of those who receive benefits are eligible, which is very high for public benefits. Most recently, our federal data has shown that California ranks third to last across the nation for CalFresh participation. And you all know California, we don't like to be at the bottom. That's partly why they fund the CalFresh Outreach Program. Our job is to really reach out to these 3 million Californians who are eligible but not participating in the CalFresh program. The other piece of why the state of California funds the CalFresh Outreach Program is they want to help these 3 million Californians, but they also want the dollars that go with those recipients. Every CalFresh dollar that comes to our state is actually a federal dollar. So those recipients, those CalFresh dollars, those are federal dollars that we want to bring into our state. And if we enrolled all those people who look to be eligible but not participating, it would be $3.5 billion per year. And if you also want to talk about the economic impact of every CalFresh dollar that comes into the community, there has been research that has shown that that dollar stimulates $1.70 in economic activity, meaning it's creating a higher demand for food, and so there has to be more food planted, transported, sold at the farmer's market or grocery stores, and so all of this adds that next layer of economic impact. Okay, the basics of CalFresh Outreach. Really what we do is we are not the county, so we do not approve or deny applications, but we are in the community, on our campuses, networking with any programs that might serve that low-income population that looks to be eligible for CalFresh. And we're going to help students through the whole application and help them through the verification process and help them keep their benefits as long as they're eligible. And if they can keep their benefits throughout the school years, then food is just one thing that they don't have to think about while they're trying to get those good grades and graduate. A lot of what we do is also spread that correct, unbiased information about the program, which is really important because students are often on their own for the first time in college and they don't necessarily know of this benefit. We also partner with those county and state offices to support successful applications as well as to ease the process for students. On our campuses, we of course are going to provide that bilingual support, and we're going to create resources that help our students. We also need to provide support for interpreting those county notices and helping the student problem solve often versus just sort of accepting a denial. We need to sort of help them look at, like, does this make sense? in general, our CalFresh Outreach contract has 3 hurdles that we've seen from students. One is sort of talking to them about the benefit, letting them know about it, and then helping them with that application. After that, they have 30 days to complete that interview, and it's a little tricky for students because they have unique class schedules, and so that can be a hiccup often. And then, of course, they need to get verifications in to document, to prove all of that information that they've given to the county so that the county can approve that application. And again, this can be a little cumbersome for a student who's trying to finish their midterms or do reports, and so we definitely want to make it simple and provide that support for them. Okay, so you've gotten a little bit of what CalFresh is, you've gotten a little bit of what CalFresh Outreach is. Now I want to dig into just the general overview of the program requirements. Basically, you all probably saw that there are scope of work items A through F. So we're going to look at each of those, and then we'll end this section with talking about those quarterly reporting requirements, and we'll also talk about the training and technical assistance requirements. So submitted applications. This includes all of those activities that support those applications getting submitted. So any promotion, tabling, workshops, presentations, any of that to get the word out about this benefit and how it would benefit a student. Helping them with the application. Drop-in assist day once per week is one of the things that we would like to see on all the campuses. And then once a semester, we would like to see a CalFresh Outreach Day. And those CalFresh Outreach Days can be a standalone event, or they can be alongside other campus events. But those are sort of the basics of scope of work item A. Scope of work item B. This is where we're going to take those contact sheets that we get from those submitted applications, and we're going to do data entry, and we're going to follow up with those students to make sure that the students actually get through that 30-day process. And we typically do it through texting or phone calls, and we have resources that we will give to you to help you with those things, as well as we often are helping with copying, faxing, or just guiding them to what the next step is. For example, yesterday on our campus, we had our CalFresh Outreach Day, and we had many students stop by who had received their manila envelope that had all of their verifications, required documents, and they hadn't opened it because they were a little overwhelmed by that envelope and weren't sure how to move forward. And so that's definitely a place where we can say, hey, bring that to us. We'll open it with you and we'll walk you through it, so that they can get those verifications in during that 30-day time period. We also work with that county liaison to support successful applications. So that's sort of, I say scope of work item A is sort of that front end of our work, and this is sort of the back end to make sure that they get through that 30-day process. I see we have a question here.
Yes, so the question is, can drop-in assistance be with student staff workers?
So yes, absolutely. Yes, anytime, anyone who looks to be eligible could attend your drop-in assistance.
And student staff absolutely can help with the application process and working with students. So students supporting students, we find actually to be a best practice on our campus and among other campuses. We find that students often feel more comfortable talking with other students than they do with staff members on campus or county workers.
That's true. Thanks, Naomi, for adding that. Okay, scope of work item C and D usually don't come until after you've helped students apply. And so this is 6 months after they apply, they do need to fill out the SAR 7. And annually, they do need to recertify. And so, of course, we want to make sure that the students that we help today know about these requirements in the future, and that they know that they can come and we can help them with those also. Because again, our goal is to keep them on CalFresh with that benefit as long as they are eligible. And if they're eligible during one semester, they're likely eligible for multiple school years. Okay, we have a question.
So the next question is this grant in jeopardy with the federal negotiations on the Farm Bill?
That's a very good question, and it's not a simple answer. I can't say yes or no. I can tell you that based on the conversations that I've been a part of at the state level, that it's really in the best interest of our communities to support the CalFresh program, because it is related to hunger numbers. And we know that in the state of California, especially, we have a very high unemployment rate. It's very expensive to live here. And so I don't know whether we'll be impacted by it, but I'm confident that it's not an issue that is for one, it's not an issue just for the Democrats or the Republican. It's definitely something that both of them are in support of, making sure that we have a resource to support those who are eligible. So we will keep you posted as we know more information. And we do send out a monthly newsletter to you all, and we'll be sure to include updates in there as well.
Looks like we have one more question before we move on to the next slide. So this question, how do you work with the county liaison regarding successful applications, and do they notify you about denied applications?
That's a great question. So we will help facilitate a contact person at the county with your campus, and we will invite them to the face-to-face training. And we will encourage ongoing conference calls or face-to-face meetings. We'll help facilitate as needed to really build that relationship, so they have a point person on your campus as well as you have a point person in the county. They will not alert you to applications that have been denied. You'll have to get that information from your students. But definitely, if a student comes in and it seems a little like, this doesn't seem right, I would encourage you to keep working with the county to see if there was something missed. Because that happens sometimes, and it's not, we're humans. So, but yeah, we will definitely help facilitate that partnership with the county liaison. Okay. Scope of work, item E, pre-screening. Now, this is a new scope of work if we have any campuses who are on the call who were with us last year. And basically, we just want to keep track of any conversations that we're having about an applicant's situation to determine if they're eligible for CalFresh. So anytime we're having that conversation with a student, we're essentially going through the questions and pre-screening them. We can come to the conclusion of, it looks like you might be eligible, or it looks like you might not be eligible. Those are considered a pre-screen, and we'll just be tallying those contacts that we have. And we'll provide you with a pre-screening log. The next scope of work item is also new. It's partnerships. And this is really collaborations beyond your expected CFO activities. So most of you all have maybe 5 or 10 or 20 partnerships in your scope of work. And we can help you develop this, but essentially it's going to be those things that you naturally do, reaching out to different departments, sort of beyond departments that you may not be working with right now, to support the information about CalFresh getting out into your campus further. Okay, so those are all the scope of work items. The program reporting requirements are quarterly, and basically what you'll do is 2 things. One is you're going to send us a screenshot of your online portal, which will be described in the October 26th webinar in more depth, because it's different for everyone. Number 2, you're going to send us the master log. Now, we've set up the master log so that it has a place for all of your reporting requirements. So again, those are the two things that you're going to send to us quarterly, and that webinar on October 26th will go over each of the tabs that are related in that master log for your reporting requirements. Mid-year and annually, you'll also be required to submit a narrative. Typical questions include, like, what challenges have you had these past 6 months? How were they resolved? What successes have you had? Provide a few examples of the county relationship. Do you have any promising practices you'd like to share with us? So again, twice a year, you'll do that. And I want to remind you all that there is no penalty language in the contract if you do not meet your scope of work numbers. Those numbers are a goal, and CDSS wants to see that those numbers are increasing each quarter towards that goal. And the context of why the numbers are lower than the goal will be something that you can share in the narrative so that we can provide the technical assistance to continue to support you reaching those goals. Okay, lastly, the training and technical assistance requirements. Those include an annual face-to-face training, many of which y'all have already signed up for with Brandy Seminaro, and we actually will start our trainings next week. We also will be hosting a monthly conference call that will need to have one person from each campus at minimum on the call. We will be sending you out the confidentiality agreement training as well as the civil rights training combined. Those usually take a person about 30 to 40 minutes, and that's something that has to be done once a year. We will provide you with both of those trainings, and it's fairly straightforward. We also have a social media work group that has been meeting quarterly. And so I think our next work group meeting is in December, although we do have Hunger and Homeless Week happening next month, and so we might host a social media Hunger and Homeless Week focused work group call just to give you some tidbits on what you can do to promote that hunger and homeless on campus. We also we'll have a data and evaluation work group. We were able to plug in some additional evaluation components to this contract that will be really exciting. And so we're hoping that one person from each campus can be a part of that work group to kind of provide some support and guidance as we move forward.
And so there's one question before we move on to the next slide. What time is the October 26th webinar, and has the invite gone out already? So that webinar is at the same time from 10 to noon on that Friday the 26th. And I believe the invite went out yesterday. If you didn't receive it, feel free to reach out to us and we can make sure to get that registration link to you.
And we will be providing our CHC
email
I
apologize. It didn't go out yesterday. It'll go out today. So you'll be receiving that today, and if you don't receive it today, then please let us know. Okay, so this is federal funding, and we do have to make sure that the activities that we're doing fall under the USDA guidance. They have a full book on the guidance that is needed to implement this project. And we pulled out the page that talks about allowable activities. And just as a reminder, everything that we've gone over so far does fall into those allowable activities, but what you'll find is you're going to have some creative spirit once you get going, and you'll be like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we? And that's where we want to come back to the SNAP guidance. So I'm going to turn this over to Amy, because this is where program and fiscal come together, because the allowable activities are obviously on the program side of it, but what you can invoice for falls under the invoice, the fiscal side of it. So Amy, take it away.
Thanks, Jenny. So this is Amy Reeson. I'm one of the fiscal analysts here at the center. And I see that we have a question I want to address really quickly. Do we reach out to CHC CalFresh Outreach at the CHC CalFresh Outreach at csuchico.edu website when needing any sort of templates or general questions or info? Yes, thank you for segueing to that communication. So yes, this is the correct email address for general questions, but we're going to come at the end of the webinar to exactly kind of how we're going to navigate various forms of communication. So we are going to get there here shortly. So coming back to the allowabilities table, as Jenny mentioned, this is a snapshot of what that table looks like in the USDA guidance. Of course, the table is much longer. I really want to point out that allowability applies to both state share and federal share. So this reminder is going to come up a few times, and I apologize for that, because often what we hear is when we say, if the instance comes up where we say, sorry, gosh, that is not allowable, oftentimes people will naturally want to say, oh, well, then can we represent that as state share or match? And unfortunately, the answer is no. If something is deemed unallowable, it cannot be represented as that state share or the match either. It's going to be purely unallowable. So I'm going to give some examples of things that are allowable and are not allowable, and include some updates from when we submitted our budget. So what we saw in quite a few of our budgets included staff t-shirts branded with the CalFresh logo and information. This came back originally with a kind of a question mark from CDSS when they saw our budget. Since then, we have received confirmation from USDA that this is allowable. So yay, that's a win. We're excited that those staff t-shirts were confirmed to be allowable. Also, CalFresh branded items used for application assistance tools. So this was a great idea that came up about a year ago with one of our campuses. Hey, could we buy some USB drives to help students when they're trying to gather those verifications that are required in their application process, and go ahead and throw the CalFresh Outreach or the CalFresh logo on there? And yes, we did also get confirmation from USDA that is an example of an allowable cost. And then printing or branding costs for giveaway items such as pantry bags. So I want to clarify this one. The printing cost of branding a giveaway item is allowable. The cost of the actual item, if it's given away to potentially eligible students, that cost is not allowable. And the reason for that is because we are in the state of California. So when you look at the USDA guidance, it is going to say it is allowable. However, in the state of California, Governor Brown did ban this under his ban on swag. Swag stands for stuff we all get. So you've seen, I'm sure, many times at health fairs or events, you know, folks are handing out pencils and pens and lanyards and these wonderful things that we all get with messaging. Those are banned in the state of California. So what we've seen many campuses do to get creative around this is they might use other sources of funding to purchase the item, whether it is, you know, a pen or these great pantry bags that are used. And then what you can use your CalFresh outreach dollars to do is to put some branding on there and maybe put the CalFresh logo, a little information about where they can find application assistance on your own campus. All of that is great and can be reimbursed with CalFresh outreach funds. So some more examples of things that are not allowable. Food is not allowable with these CalFresh outreach funds. Oftentimes, folks want to give away food at like their CalFresh outreach events. That's a great way to pull in students, is offer free food. Those things oftentimes then get donated or used, use another source of funds, because food is not going to be allowable with these funds. I already mentioned the swag or giveaways. So incentives to fill out an application. I just want to add clarification on those giveaway items. They must always be able to be given away to everyone. So if they're used as an enticement to get people over to your table or booth or wherever you're providing information, that's great. They need to be given away to everyone equally not just if they fill out an application. And then radio, TV, and billboard advertisements that are used to promote CalFresh benefits and enrollment are not allowable in the USDA guidance. And I pulled this language specifically because we do use social media. Jenny mentioned our social media committee or work group. We do use social media, and those costs are allowable to relay accurate information about the CalFresh benefits. But specifically, radio, TV, and billboard advertisements are called out in the USDA guidance as being unallowable. One other thing that I want to throw in there is about the News and Review project that some campuses have been contacted by News and Review. This media project was not included in the California state plan when they were originally pulling together the plan to be approved by USDA. So if you've been contacted, please note that any costs for this media outreach will not be allowable with this funding stream. So Jenny, did you have anything to add about the News and Review before I address the question that's in the chat box?
Just that was the guidance that we got from the state.
Yeah,
California Department of Social Services. So if you do, it's a great avenue, I think, to promote the CalFresh program. You just can't use any state or federal CalFresh outreach dollars to support those activities.
Thank you. So the question,
are parking costs for eligibility workers to park on campus allowable? And yes, that's a great question. And yes, that is absolutely an allowable cost. That cost would fall under travel, which might be surprising to you. But so as long as you have funding in your travel category to pay for the parking passes, that is not a concern at all. And if you need to move money into that, we will talk about budget revisions in just a few more slides.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to go into an overall, just an overarching fiscal overview and talk about some of the requirements. We're going to talk about state share and federal share again. This, as you know, is a more complex budget for grant funding, and so we want to really solidify what is state share, what is federal share. We're going to give a budget summary example. We're going to review our fiscal reporting process, and then as Naomi just mentioned, budget adjustments, we will touch on that, as well as fiscal desk reviews and program site visits. So just so you all know, I mean, our philosophy here as fiscal analysts is that we want to support you and enhance your programming. And so we want to provide clarification on this funding stream, the allowabilities and guidance. But throughout this, I'm just going to reiterate, we're here for questions. We really want to support you and allow you to be able to utilize these funds as best as possible for this programming. So some overarching items about the funding stream. Your federal share, or your requested funds, is up to 50% of your state share. State share you may also refer to as match, cost share, cost match. And we're going to go into that into a little more detail here in a moment. Also keep in mind this is a detailed cost reimbursed budget. So we do have line items, cost categories, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more in a moment as well. There is an annual closeout, so funds do not roll over year to year on this funding stream. This contract is for 3 federal fiscal years. The federal fiscal year goes from October 1st through September 30th. And I know that doesn't really align with the campus year, the academic year really well. So we're going to help you with some strategies to how we can best align those. But yes, just to reiterate, it is 3 federal fiscal years. We will have quarterly invoicing and flex within the cost categories. And there are no limits on the number of budget adjustments. Again, going back to that overall philosophy, we want to help you spend the dollars as best as possible. So we will work with you on moving money around however is needed on your campus. So a little more about the federal share and state share. This image is to help show that your federal share, again, is 50% of your state share, Or if you look at a combined total, it is 1/3 of your total budget. So you're going to hear it referred to in both ways. The way CDSS and USDA looks at these budgets is really as a whole. They look at it as a total. So in general, they usually refer to it as federal share being 1/3 of the whole, state share being 2/3 of that whole. Again, state share is the value of existing resources. There's no actual money exchanged. So when you're reporting state share to us, you are reporting that value. You are not sending us any money. There is no money exchange. So examples of a state share contribution. So we have some examples here of personnel time. Personnel time tends to be the bulk of that state share or match. And so for example, CalFresh Outreach student intern supervision time and the actual unpaid intern or volunteer time, both of those can be great sources of state share. The, let's say, financial aid office, career and internship center, EOP staff, counseling center, other existing staff on your campus that might be referring people to get CalFresh benefits, or even pre-screening to see, hey, might you be eligible? Might this be a need and a benefit that would benefit or help you? That time is absolutely allowable state share. And then there can also be non-personnel costs that state share. So some folks included in their budgets, other equipment or supplies that would be provided by their campus to support this overall effort, and that is absolutely allowable as well. So examples of federal share costs, again, this is the portion that's the requested funds and what you will be reimbursed for to extend your CalFresh application assistance efforts on your campus. So some examples of personnel would be, let's say, a program manager or student staff time that you're going to add to your team of folks who are doing application assistance. Operating costs, copies, phone, etc. Those are supplies that are needed to just conduct business. Program travel, so this could include if you're traveling to, let's say, satellite sites, work group meetings, things like that that are related to CalFresh Outreach, or also our statewide convenings that we encourage folks to include in their budget. Program materials, so those items that we just brought up as when we were reviewing allowability. So if you decided you wanted to brand some pantry food bags or items of that sort, those would go in program materials. So I want to look a little more closely at personnel and some examples of what we saw in budgets for personnel who would be working on CalFresh Outreach. CFO student intern supervisor. So this is a position where typically it's faculty, but not always. It may be staff who are supervising interns or staff who are actually hands-on doing the application assistance with students. A campus program manager, many times we're described as someone who's overseeing and monitoring the fiscal and programmatic activities. This tends to be our point person who we're working with, you know, day to day, whether it's scheduling trainings or doing follow-ups on questions that they might receive from students, so on and so forth. A CFO student lead, oftentimes we see on campuses, there's one or two students who are really the key point people for doing application assistance, helping get students through the 30-day window, those verifications, helping make sure they get their interview with the county, so on and so forth. And then interns, so unpaid interns or volunteers also are great for helping students. So we talked about that working on the peer level, students helping students being a best practice, whether they're a paid student lead or unpaid interns. This is a great model. Okay, so we're going to move into some example CFO staff and activities. So positions described on the previous slide, all of those positions that I just went over, they could be funded by the campus or other non-federal funds and captured as state share, or they could be funded by your federal shares and reimbursed by this contract. And then, of course, it could be a combination of both. So we have many campuses that do a combination of both, where an individual who's doing CalFresh outreach is partially funded by campus or other funds, and then partially funded by this funding stream. In other words, a position is state share, it's federal share, or it's a combination of both, just depending on how the position is funded and what works best with your campus. Okay, so we're going to give one example calculation of how we calculate the value of personnel time. This we will dive into more heavily in our upcoming fiscal reporting webinar. So just to give one example, we would look at the annual salary and multiply it by what portion of their FTE is contributed to CalFresh Outreach. So in this example, we gave a salary times a 0.2 FTE. Then we would add in fringe benefit costs and come up with a dollar value. This is the value that would be then reported as either state share or federal share to be reimbursed. In this example, the 0.2 FTE represents 3 WTU, or about 8 hours a week, and the task might include developing internship objectives with the interns, regularly checking in and supervising them, helping them troubleshoot questions that may come up during their internship. And the reason we use the faculty in this example is because oftentimes faculty are the ones assigned to do the internship supervision, because it does generate units or credit, no credit grade. But definitely on campuses, we also see staff doing this as well, so it's not always a faculty member. So here's an example overall budget summary. Again, circling back around to representing that 1/3 of the total is federal share, 2/3 of the total is state share. In this example, the state share is a total of $100,000, the federal share is $50,000. But what I really want to point out in this example is that that 1/3, 2/3 split is not required for each and every budget line category. That split is for the total. So in this example, you see here, the state share is primarily made up of personnel salaries and fringe benefits. They have a little bit listed there in operating, and then they're indirect. Whereas on the federal share column, that middle column, you can see there's costs allocated to each and every category. Again, that 1/3, 2/3 split does not need to be by category. It's just the overall total. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause there. This is a good spot. If you have any questions, please, again, remember to use our chat box. We are happy to respond to those questions. And then Naomi's going to dive into more of the actual quarterly reporting requirements.
Okay, hello everybody. So I'm going to talk about fiscal reporting, and just to keep in mind, we will be talking about this in much more detail on the fiscal reporting webinar that we'll be having on November 2nd from 10 to noon. We'll be sending out an invite for that soon. But just to kind of give you an overview, fiscal reporting is the submission of your invoice, your state share documentation report, and the personnel backup in the form of time and effort forms. Your invoice is where you're going to be reporting all of your federal share costs for the quarter, and those are the dollars that are going to be reimbursed to your campus. Your state share documentation report, or SSDR, is where you will be reporting the value of all of your CFO allowable costs that are being funded by your campus or other non-federal funds. This is the portion that is not reimbursed. But remember that no money is exchanged. You're just reporting the value of those efforts on your campus. So just to give you kind of an overview of some of the main requirements, fiscal reporting documents are due to your fiscal analyst 30 days after the end of each quarter. You'll be reimbursed for your federal share up to 50% of the cumulative state share that's reported. So in quarter one, this is going to be up to 50% of whatever state share you have reported in quarter one. But then moving forward after that, keep in mind that it's cumulative. So if you reported more state share than you needed for your federal share in quarter one, in quarter two, you'd be able to then report less. And we understand that this is likely to happen, especially because of how the campus semesters, or if you're on quarters, align with the quarters for this. So we recognize that quarter one doesn't align nicely with the beginning of the school year. So we recognize that there will be that fluctuation. The only backup documentation that is required every quarter is for personnel, and it's in the form of those time and effort forms. Keep in mind that if you are reporting unpaid interns for state share, they do require a little bit of extra backup documentation, and we'll provide all of those details along with the templates during that fiscal reporting webinar. You cannot have negative balances for your federal share on your invoice. So if that happens, what you'll need to do is complete a bar to move money around. Keep in mind that we mentioned that there is flexibility within the categories, but if you need to move money between categories, that's when we would require a budget adjustment. This next step is optional, but we highly recommend it. That you are more than welcome to send your fiscal reporting documents to your fiscal analyst for review prior to obtaining signatures. That gives us a chance to look over everything for you and make sure everything looks good to go, and that way you can wait to get signatures until after you know that it's final. That just limits the amount of times of having to gather signatures, because we know that can be hard sometimes to track people down. And then we've also linked here to our invoice review checklist. And this checklist goes over what we're looking at when we're reviewing your invoice. And that can just be a tool for you to use so that as you're preparing your invoice and your state share documentation report, you can see what we're going to be looking at and then check those things beforehand. Look, I think Amy has something to add before we move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out in the middle of this slide, we say we have no negative balances for federal share, but you'll notice we didn't say that for state share. And the reason for that is you can always over-report state share. We'll be glad to take extra state share. It's just we can't have a negative balance for federal share because we cannot pay more than what is documented in your current budget. So that's just why there's the difference.
And Jenny has something to add too.
Just to add to that is if someone does report over state share, more state share than they have, that supports the whole contract. So it is inevitable that some campuses will ramp up a little bit slower. And so please, if you've got state share, claim it, and we'll try and equivalate the federal share back to you if you go over your state share budget, but it's good for the overall contract.
Yes, thank you. Good addition.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so then on this next slide, we are going to talk about budget adjustment requests, otherwise known as BARs. So as we've stated a few times before, you have flexibility within your categories, and so BARs are not required to move money within a category or line item, so they are required if you want to move money between categories. So for example, if you want to move money from your personnel category to your travel category, so say for example you realize that, oh, you need to attend these extra meetings that would be super helpful for you in order to complete your activities, but you don't have enough money in travel, but you have extra money in personnel because you didn't use as much as you anticipated, you can complete a budget adjustment request, and we can help you then move some of those funds from your personnel category to your travel category. However, if you just realize that there are shifts within your personnel, so if you realize you need more student staff time but need less program manager staff time or anything along those lines, it does not require a bar because you are invoicing by category. And once again, you can complete an unlimited number of budget revisions to shift funds within and between categories over the course of the contract. We want to make sure that you're able to use these funds as best you can, and therefore, whenever this is needed, we can help you do this. And so, like I was just saying, you can submit these to your fiscal analyst whenever you need to do a bar. We will be providing more details on how to complete and submit a BAR during the webinar that will be on November 2nd. We know that some of you have already asked about completing a budget revision. Some of you realize that the budget you submitted during the proposal development phase has already changed. And while we can't change your budget right now, because that's the one that's being approved right now by CDSS in our contract, we did provide a link to these instructions so that if you do want to start drafting it, feel free to take a look at that, and you can go ahead and move forward. If you think you will be needing to do a BAR before you invoice for Q1, we're requesting that if you could get that budget revision to your fiscal analyst by mid-December, it would be ideal. That would give us then time to review and approve your budget revision, and then update your invoice workbook and get it back to you before you need to complete and submit your invoice. And it looks like there is a question before we move on to the next slide. Do we need to submit a BAR if we're moving funds between salaries and benefits? So those are different categories in your budget. So if you realize that if you're shifting around personnel and then it does impact the amount that's in fringe, we would need to do a BAR because those are separate categories in your budget. So the next topic is fiscal desk reviews and training assistance program review. So these reviews will occur at least once during the contract period. So that means at least once over the 3-year period. The fiscal desk reviews and technical assistance program reviews are conducted by us here at the Center for Healthy Communities. And they're both really a way to just get a better understanding of what's going on at your campus and see if there's any way we could help you kind of revise processes and make things easier. And we did this with our contractors that had contracts with us last go around, and it was a great way to learn more about each campus because it helps us help you better. I want you to keep in mind, though, that you will be given plenty of advance notice before this will occur, and it will not be occurring during Q1. So don't worry about this yet. It's not coming up anytime soon, but we just wanted to give you a heads up that it would be occurring at least once during this 3-year period. For the fiscal desk reviews, we're only reviewing fiscal documents, and we would request essentially all of the other backup that would be included besides the personnel. So you're including your personnel backup with every quarterly invoice, but for a fiscal desk review, we would just ask for that extra backup of any other costs that are being reported. There also could potentially be a site visit by CDSS and CHC during the contract period. That is a CDSS requirement, and so if that does occur, we would also let you know well in advance. So this next slide, we wanted to just kind of tie together some of the topics that we've been talking about. So you may have seen this slide before, but what this is showing you is essentially the impact of this CFO project. We haven't updated this slide yet to represent our new contract that has 44 campuses, 44 subcontractors, but this represents our contract that we had from 2017 to 2018. So what this is showing you is that you start out with this state-funded time and effort. So that's the state share, also referred to as match or cost share. And so that is those state-funded projects and positions that are being used to support CalFresh outreach. So last go around, there was about $2 million in state share from 11 CSU campuses. Then the reimbursement that's brought back from that state share that's being reported is $1.6 million in federal share that's coming from USDA to CDSS to all of us. This equated to about $400,000 in F&A to all of the campuses and about $1.2 million in direct costs to run this project. Once again, as a reminder of that pie chart that we were looking at before, there's that state share portion and the federal share portion that brings together the entire CFO budget, which for the last contract period was $3.6 million. And that is for CalFresh outreach. Then if you remember back that Jenny was talking about earlier, there's also then the CalFresh piece of it, which is actually the dollars that students are getting in their pockets for food. So we estimated that about 22,000 students were receiving money for food over the 2-year period, which equated to about $39.6 million that students received to buy food. And then also keep in mind that Jenny was also mentioning that there's that economic impact effect, because these are federal dollars, these are new dollars that are essentially being brought to the state of California, that then has an economic impact in the state, which equates to about $71.3 million. Okay, now we are going to jump into contract structure and communication. So we just want to give you a few updates on the contractor information form and give you a little more of a description about how we use that. And then also we'll dive in a little bit to our Center for Healthy Communities contact and our org chart, just to kind of give you some context of how we will be supporting you and how we will be communicating with you. So the contractor information form, or the CIF, it's one of the documents that you submitted during the proposal development phase. We use this to create our contact list for all of our email communications. So anybody that's working on this project that needs to be on communications from us has to be included on your contractor information form. On that form on the last page, we had 3 spots for any other contacts. So we defined a bunch of individuals that needed to be included, but then we also had extra spots for anybody else that might not fit one of those roles listed on the CIF, but that still needs to be on email communications. Updates to your CIF can be submitted at any time to your fiscal analyst or your program manager. If you add any other contacts on your CIF, please make sure to specify their role and the types of communications that they should receive. On the next slide, I'll go into what different types of communications we send out and who by default would be getting them, and then we can show you how to update that if needed. So we have 3 main distribution lists: a contract distribution list, a program distribution list, and a fiscal distribution list. So people on the contract distribution list are going to be getting emails about contract development and contract amendments, and generally that's about it. The program distribution list people would be getting emails about training and technical assistance, program reporting, notification of any webinars that are coming up, any trainings that are coming up, policy updates, monthly emails, anything along those lines. The people on the fiscal distribution list, they would be receiving fiscal reporting reminders, notification of any fiscal related webinars. They also will be getting the monthly email update and any other types of communications related to fiscal reporting. So then down below on this second half of the slide, these are the roles that are listed on that contractor information form. So there's the contract signatory, and then the distribution list. These are the default lists that we would add these individuals to unless you tell us otherwise. So the contract signatory would be getting contract emails. The project director would be getting contract, program, and fiscal distribution list emails. The project coordinator would be getting program emails. The payment receiver, fiscal reporter, and fiscal signatory would all be getting fiscal emails. And then for that other contact, like I was saying on the previous slide, if you could please note which of these distribution lists those people should be on, then we'll make sure that they get added to the appropriate list. Also, if you have people in these other roles that aren't getting the right emails based on our breakdown here, just let us know and we can then update our distribution list to match what emails anybody on your campus needs to be getting. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jenny now to give a description of our CHC org chart and how we're going to be helping support you.
Why, thank you, Naomi. So as you can imagine, this contract is with 44 subcontractors. It's quite large, and we are up for the task of supporting all of you all. And really, our vision is to have CalFresh application assistance and support on every campus in California. So we will be following the workflow that you see up on the screen, and it may change, but this is what we're going to start with. We basically have divided the state in regions. So on the left side, you can see that that's where the bulk of the campuses are. If you remember back to that slide in the very beginning, it had little stars where all the subcontractors are. They're throughout the state. And so the state has been kind of divvied up into campus regions. So we will let you know officially what region you're in and who your program person is and who your fiscal analyst is. But you'll basically have a small group with a team that will support that region. On the right side, we will have our far north and community outreach with some of our community colleges that are around us. So Butte, College of the Siskiyous, and Yuba will be part of that yellow circle team. And then our green team is just for our in-house Chico State support. And then the middle prime CFO contract team, this is where all of your program and fiscal people are that are supporting the contract overall and supporting all of those teams. So that's sort of our plan as we move forward, and we'll be adding people to those different circles, and you'll get more information about that as we move forward. If you haven't already done so, you should have scheduled your on-campus training. So if that hasn't been scheduled on your campus, please reach out to our team's training coordinator, Brandy Seminaro, at CHC CalFresh Outreach at csuchico.edu. As I mentioned earlier, we are starting to train tomorrow, and if you can imagine trying to schedule and coordinate trainings in the same area to support that face-to-face on-campus training, we want to hear from, I think we have 4 or 5 campuses that we haven't heard from yet. And also, if you haven't signed your contract and or updated your CIF, please make sure that you send that to the fiscal analyst. And that would be either Naomi or Amy who have reached out to you with that contract signature. So next steps. After this is sort of your welcome to the contract, and we know that there are program and fiscal people on here. We wanted to give you all sort of that foundation of like, oh, here's what this contract is. Here are the basic requirements. The next steps will be that you will receive a welcome email from your CHC program manager and fiscal analyst in the next couple of weeks. You will see your training team either next week or within the next couple of months. And we want to be sure that you have your program people for sure attend the data entry and program reporting webinar, which is on October 26th from 10 to 12. Originally, we had also included the fiscal part onto the webinar, but just so you all know, we decided to break it up because the amount of information was just getting too much to digest. We do encourage the fiscal people to listen to the program side of it and the program people to listen to the fiscal side, because it's helpful to know what the other is required to submit and track. And that helps your campus really work together to make sure that the allowable activities are meeting the invoicing allowability. And so again, I strongly encourage that. As you can see up on the screen, November 2nd from 10 to 12 is the fiscal webinar. And Naomi has something she'd like to add to this slide.
And I just want to reiterate what Jenny just said, that it's so helpful to have that crossover between program and fiscal. We find that the campuses that have the easiest time doing their fiscal reporting and their program reporting are those campuses that have that good relationship between both their program people and their fiscal people.
Yeah, that's definitely a best practice. They become your best friends after a while. And it's really fun because I think sometimes the fiscal people are in the office, and it's really fun for them to get out and go to a CalFresh Outreach Day and realize the impact that this program is having on students. Just as well as it's good for the program people to go, oh my God, there's a lot of work on the fiscal side. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our webinar, and I just want to say welcome to the team. We are very, very excited to have this contract growing and to be working with 30 new college campuses. We know that today there is a lot of information, and we will be there for you and sort of walk you through the steps to help you be successful. Remember that we are a campus entity, and so we do understand that campus environment. We've been conducting CalFresh outreach since 2006, and we are your ultimate resource. So reach out to us via phone, email, and or in person, and we can support you through the entire process. So again, if you have any questions, please contact us at the CHC CalFresh Outreach at csuchico.edu email. And does anyone else have anything else to say before we close the webinar?
I was just going to say, well, thank you all for joining us. And also, we're happy to stick around for a little bit. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. Or if you would rather, if it would be easier to ask your question verbally, we can also unmute your line for you.
Thank you, thank you. So if you don't have any questions, we'll see you soon. You'll hear from us soon. And again, we'll close out the webinar, but we will stay on the line if someone wants to chat with us and ask us a question. Just let us know in the chat box. Otherwise, happy Friday.
Yes. So we do have a question that just came in.
Oh, good.
For the in-person meeting, how long for session 1 and session 2?
Yeah, so the morning session is 8:30 to 12, and we typically break for a half an hour for lunch, and the afternoon session is 12:30 to 3. You are welcome.
Great. We're going to go ahead and keep the line open for another minute or two, and definitely the chat box will stay open for a little while longer. Keep rolling those questions in.